Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to one of our very first episodes of The Secrets of the High Demand Coach. And as I was working on this project, getting ready for the show, thinking about who I'd love to have on the show, the very first name that came up every time I sat down to make a list, or if I was doing my thing and coming up with a list in my head, the first person every time was my dear friend and mentor, Les McKeown, who is with us here today. And so, Les, I'd love to just open up for those of you who don't know you. I don't know how that's possible, but some people might not know you. And I'd love to just hear a little bit of your story, how you got into coaching, why you got into coaching, and what that looks like today.
Well, let me state right at the outset for all of our viewers who got here by doing some sort of a keyword search, I'm not Les McKeown, the ex-front singer of the Bay City Rollers. That has hounded me all my life. I'm the other one. So Les McKeown, founder, CEO of Predictable Success, author of Predictable Success, the Synergist, Do Scale and Do Lead. And basically what I do is I help people grow their business.
Awesome. Excellent. And I know from our history that you spent some time as a CPA, or the British equivalent of that. How did you decide to make the shift from that CPA role into coaching consulting like you do now?
That was always, I think, the through line for me, Scotty. I started training as a chartered accountant, actually for two reasons. One was as from a dirt poor blue collar family, and it seemed to me probably a good profession if I wanted to actually just earn some money. So there was that. But also I had a fascination about business. I was a really weird kid, never wanted to be a fireman, didn't want to be a pilot, didn't want to do any of the other gender normative or non-normative things. I just sort of was fascinated by, I thought I was fascinated by business. As it turns out now that I look back in retrospect, I was fascinated by people dynamics, but offices and what was happening in them was really just a way in which I was sort of vaguely seeing that. And my very first ever mentor, a wonderful man called Jim Johnson, still amazingly alive. I don't know how. It must be like 300 by now. Told me if I wanted to get a good understanding, go study, either be a lawyer or an accountant. And I chose being an accountant. So when I was doing that and qualifying, and then for the first few years when I put my own shingle out and practiced, it was really as a sort of a way in to get to work with then businesses, for-profit businesses, which mostly what I was involved in. These days I do at least as much work. Well, that's not quite right. About somewhere between a third and a half of my work is with not-for-profit. And the more that I worked with businesses, the more I got just transfixed by what was going on. And I was very fortunate in my timing. I started all of this right at the peak of a massive drive. I mean, a huge drive towards launching indigenous businesses in the UK because we didn't have any. We were a branch. I was living in the UK back then. With a branch economy of South Korea with Daewoo, Rocky Gold Star organizations like that, LG, and the US. So if Ford caught a cold, we'd lose 15,000 jobs in a plant at Leeds or somewhere like that. And so it was this huge drive to launch new businesses. Cut it very short. I got involved in that by advising people, helping them start up. I got a good reputation for that. People started to ask me if I'd be interested in joining them, being like a interim CEO, just be on their board, just be on the founding team. And over a space of about 8 years, I basically got to cherry pick 6 or 7 really good opportunities every year. And so I arrived at age 35, having launched or helped launch 42 businesses.
Wow.
And as you, I think I've heard me say many times, even a dumb Irishman, and believe me, that's what I am, begins to see repetitive patterns when you do something that often. And that's what grabbed me, was just seeing these early stage patterns.
Excellent. So let's fast forward a little bit now. So you're a chartered accountant, you're working with businesses, love business in and out, have for some reason launched this massive number of organizations, and you start seeing patterns emerge. And if we kind of fast forward a little while, tell us about how that ties into who you work with now. You even mentioned just a moment ago working in the nonprofit world, which I think is rare for folks to split that fence, working both in the for-profit and nonprofit world. What ties that all together? Who do you work with? And what's the most important work that you would say you do with them?
Well, what ties it together is that work that I just described really, at that point, gave me essentially just a couple of development points. Then there, what are now the two first stages in the predictable success life cycle: early struggle and fun. My later work with larger but still fast-growing organizations made me realize this was a life cycle. This wasn't just a couple of stages you had to work through. There's actually 7 stages in the end. It looks like an arc, as if you lobbed a ball up in the air. 3 growth stages, 3 decline stages, peak stage, predictable success. And I spent, after the period I just talked to you about, essentially 20 years just groping my way towards that model, because I wasn't making anything up. I was basically trying to clear the brush to see the shape of the thing that was actually there. How do, as I thought at the time, businesses grow and start to decline, and why do they start to decline? So we arrive at 1999, moved to the US, spent another few years proving out what I believe this model to be with very, very large organizations, Fortune 100 organizations. Write the book, Predictable Success, launch it. And then I start getting emails and calls from people who are working in not-for-profits who are buying the book, although I'd written it exclusively for a business audience, loving it. And then that's a moment of Homer Simpson slap the forehead. Of course, I'm just talking about groups of people, any group of 2 or more people trying to achieve common goals. So it can be an organization of any sort, for-profit, not-for-profit, doesn't really matter. And at that point, I sort of got agnostic from the point of view of what I was doing, because I'd started, having developed this model, I really was burnt out on just launching my own businesses over and over again. I always had a heart for teaching, and so I started to do that. I started to consult with people using this whole model, and as I just mentioned, the not-for-profit faith and cause-based organizations, that came to me. I did not go to it because I was not clever enough to realize that at the time. But by 2010, those types of organizations started contacting me, and I started to get to speak at non-for-profit, non-business events. And we have a huge and very avid following in the not-for-profit world.
That's great. Excellent. Now, I know lots about your predictable success model. It's one of my favorites. And we don't necessarily have time to go into it, so we can give some folks some resources on how to find more about the model. But what, if you were to kind of boil it down, what is the problem that model solves?
That what got you here won't get you there, essentially, which is the title of a very good book by Marshall Goldsmith. But what everybody thinks you need to get right to grow an organization is usually trapped in what are essentially secondary, in fact, probably tertiary level things like, defining your market, getting your pricing right, all the stuff that's the day-to-day stuff, because that's what we're dealing with every day. In fact, the biggest single barrier to growing any organization, for-profit or not-for-profit, is recognizing that the very leadership skills that you need, that you can't do without to get through the early struggle phase, for example, they are right for that time, and you can't and shouldn't do anything else. Time to talk about what they are, but you can think about a hard-driving visionary founder. But that builds synapses that most leaders get locked into, and then when the business or organization changes, their leadership style doesn't change with it, and therefore they get trapped by their own success, reaching for the toolkit that solved things back then, but isn't solving anything here. So in the end of the day, I do a lot of stuff, but mostly it's focused on the 4 inches between a leader's ears.
Yeah. Fantastic. Now, one of the things that I know from being in the coaching space, from working with a lot of others, from being a CEO myself and trying to grow a business, is that we try lots of things that don't necessarily work. What are the things that, especially in this context of what got you here won't get you there, what are the things that you see your clients trying before they ultimately decide to, hey, we can use less as help?
The thing that they try most is more. So we grew really successfully for years by just saying yes to everything and somehow making it work. So let's do more of that. Things are getting, we seem to be losing our touch here. So we amp up the volume. We try to not just repeat, but amplify, excuse me, the things that got us here. So for example, saying yes. Saying yes to anything is absolutely hugely important to get out of early struggle. You can't get too picky. In fun, you want to say yes to everything because you're sort of in a monopoly game that, that first go around the board where you buy everything. That's what that's like. So that's all good and right. But then a point comes, it's a growth stage we call whitewater, where actually you've got to get very strategic and disciplined about saying no. And that's really tough. I mean, there are visionary founders that I know who can't get the word out. They can't say it. So, we got to find other phrases and terminologies to get them to do that. So that's a classic example is that, one of the things we do very early, not very early on, but relatively early on in most of our businesses is we build a series of myths and legends because we say yes to everything and then somehow make it happen. In the somehow making it happen bit, we do incredible things. I mean, we really do. We punch way above our weight. And those myths and legends are perfect and right for the time. But they turn into repeated performance expectations. And we're now working in an environment that's way too complex for us to use those myths and legends as actual repeatable tools. There are always lessons to be learned from them, but you can't just keep doing that. And so the ability to get disciplined about things is one of the hardest things for a successful visionary founder to do.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings an interesting point. You mentioned a successful founder, right? So these aren't necessarily folks that are most of us would see as struggling. And one of the kind of negative connotations I've seen in the market or with founders is this idea of if you get a coach, it's because you're either not capable or you got something wrong, or it's almost like you're fixing something that's broken. But we're talking about really successful people. So one of the questions that I have for you and that I ask a lot is, in your opinion, who needs a coach and why?
Anybody that wants to develop, and grow their own business or grow their own leadership skills. And as far as the why is concerned, it's just none of us are lacking a large area of what we don't know. We don't know. So leaders have got a higher quadrant of things that they know than most other people, because that's self-awareness as a leader is an important thing. So here's something I really know I know. Maybe I really know marketing. Maybe I launched a coding business and I used to be able to code, and I really know that. Maybe I really know how to motivate people. Maybe I really know how to spot a market opportunity. And then there's a bunch of stuff that you know that you don't know. So like, I don't know, maybe there's a leader sitting around somewhere saying, we're getting into murky waters here. And I know I don't know enough about the legal side of this. I don't know about it, and I know I don't know about it. That's not really where coaching comes in. There are a lot of other ways to solve that. You can hire somebody who does know about legal. If you want to, probably the worst solution, you can become a legal expert yourself. But you know it, so you just find a way to fix it. Where we all need coaches is because there's this huge area that we don't even know we don't know. And when you think back on any highly tough year, it's almost always because you got hit by something you didn't know. Because if you knew about it and it still caught you, that's on you, right? Even if you know you don't know. If you've been going around for a couple of years thinking, I really should know more about the legal implications of what I'm doing, you don't do anything about it, and then wham, you get a lawsuit to put you out of business. that's on you. You knew you didn't know about it. You didn't do anything about it. But when something comes that you didn't, what? And what a good coach will do is help you really narrow down the what you don't know side of things by, for example, thinking through the implications of making decisions, by thinking through the way in which you're making decisions. So that's where I think coaching becomes most helpful, is just having a guide to the parts of the map you haven't been on before.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I remember, again, as I'm leading a company, the biggest company, I'd ever been part of leadership in is the one that I'm leading, right? And just like totally making it up as I go. Had the unfortunate benefit or curse of doing that in my mid-20s, which I think made it quite a bit worse. And I remember, it was very, very resistant to hiring a coach at first. And the very first coach I hired, a dear friend, he'll be on the show here soon, but we were talking about whether or not it would be a fit. And I remember telling him, I know what's around this corner. I don't need help with what's going on right now. I'm sick of getting blindsided. Feels like every time we figure out what's in front of us, there's something else behind it. And I couldn't wrap my mind around it. And to be honest, the best tool I've ever seen for seeing around those corners is the predictable success model that you created. It does such a phenomenal job at not only explaining what's going on right now, but giving us foresight into what's coming. So it's obvious that that's a big part of what you do and how you do it in the work that you've created. It's easily one of the greatest benefits I've experienced using the model and walking others through it. It's phenomenal. Now, I've worked with lots of coaches, and I know that one of the things that coaches are really good at giving advice, right? Coaches are really good at seeing clearly in other people's businesses. They're not always the best at seeing clearly in their own business. And oftentimes they can forget to work on their own business because they spend all their time helping others work on theirs. So question, how do you fight that? And two, what's the big thing that you're working on from a growth strategy for you and your business? If you put your CEO hat on with us for a moment.
Let me take your first question first. There's a saying in Scotland, the cobbler's bairns are the last shod. Cobbler person makes shoes, bairns kids. So the shoemaker's kids are the last ones that get shoes. And it's certainly the case that whenever I was a chartered accountant, for example, I was terrible at filing my taxes. It was dangerously bad, not because of any ill intent, but just, you're spending all day, every day helping other people do that. It's the last thing you want to do for yourself. And, there's a similar thing where when you work in the world of coaching. Now, I do a lot of consulting, a lot of public speaking and other things. Coaching is probably about half of my life. And I did a very cheesy thing some years ago, which is I invented an alter ego, another personality. He has a name, and I picture him. And I'll be actually, he and I check in a couple of times a year, and I'm on an overnight flight to the UK pretty much right after we record this interview. And I'm in a season where I need to talk to Jim. So I'm going to talk to Jim. And that might sound stupid, because how can you coach yourself, first of all? And secondly, given all that I've just said, don't I need to be talking to somebody who's, been in parts of the map that I haven't been to? Yes, I do. And I'm very fortunate that, and this is one of the great blessings of being a coach for a period of time and building your client base. They teach me that. I learn about the parts of the map I haven't been to working with my clients, because just as I've been parts they haven't, they've been parts I haven't. What I need Jim for is to remind me of my North Star, keep me focused on what I'm here to do. It's so easy, particularly as I'm a dedicated solopreneur. There's me and an assistant you may hear from if the mailman comes during our interview here. And that's it. And it's very easy to lose sight of your priorities and get involved in busy work. I can sometimes stand up at the end of the day feeling I had a really good, productive day, and then realize all I've done is stare at screens and move things around. I haven't really done much in getting me closer to what my personal mission is. So that leads really into the answer to your second question, which is I love the interpersonal interaction that I have with my clients, whether I'm consulting or coaching with them. And I can't imagine me ever not doing that. I'll probably die with my boots on. But I also want what I've got, because I actually agree with you. I don't want to sound arrogant, but I didn't make this stuff up. I uncovered it, and it is incredibly powerful. And I want to make it as available to as many people as possible. So a combination of getting the message out digitally and on-demand type materials is really one part of that focus. And the other is working with other people, other coaches, through largely through you, to get that message out and to help other people be able to use the predictable success model as coaches. That expands the footprint and the impact.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate the transparency with it, the honesty with it. I think it's really powerful. It's a great exercise. All right, I'd like to shift gears kind of one last time here as we get close to the end, and it's in many ways the moment we've all been waiting for. But the show is called The Secrets of the High Demand Coach, and I know from our relationship that you meet that criteria in every way, shape, and form. And I'd love to hear what would be, if you were to boil kind of your expertise down to one thing that you could share with our audience today, what would be that one secret that you would share with them with regards to helping, often these are founders, leaders, but helping them to grow their organization faster and freer than ever?
Well, I think there are two separate things going on here. One is what will help me grow my coaching business fastest? And the other is what will help me be the best coach I can be? And the two can diverge a little bit. The best way to grow your coaching business, which is the straight question that you asked me, is to be the best coach you can be and then add a lot of time. Just, I'm fortunate, and I mean what I'm about to say, to be sitting here. I'll be 66 week after next, and I've been doing this for almost 40 years. And that's one of the reasons I'm successful. I've just been doing it for so darn long and always trying to do it to the best of my ability. However, that's of no help to somebody who's at the other end of the 40-year tunnel. So what I would say is the mechanics of keeping yourself focused on being the best coach you can be are, first of all, don't ever coach somebody to get the check. One of the things that I tell all my clients is a very mercenary point, is you will get the best possible coaching from me if you pay all my fee up front. Because then I have no dog in the hunt.
Yeah.
You're not getting it back. So I'm going to be more helpful and honest to you when we come to the tough parts. The second thing is always go to the balcony, by which I mean always abstract one level up after you're done. Every coaching interaction you have, there's a pattern in there somewhere. So you want to spend some time thinking, where did I hear that before? Where would that thing that we talked about fit in a bucket? Is that a communications issue that maybe a lot of leaders have? Always trying to, as a great leadership writer called Ron Ziegler, and he talks about going to the balcony. That you've got to be there dancing, doing the thing, but you've got to be able to get to the balcony. And the third thing I would say is, and I learned this belatedly, is I guess one way to put it is, always put your own face mask on before attempting to help others. Right. You just got to look after yourself. I've been a better coach. I've probably done the best work I've done in my life in the last 5 years. And one of the reasons for that is I got my nutrition and my health into shape. And that made a huge difference. Huge difference.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Now, I know some of our listeners would like help with, understanding what stage they're in, what that means, understanding why what worked isn't working anymore. How can folks connect with you and learn more both about you and the model that you've created?
Just go to predictablesuccess.com/Scottie. SCOTTIE, and there'll be a a free chapter from either Predictable Success or the Synergist, whatever floats your boats. And there are links to contact me in every way possible: LinkedIn, Twitter. There's a direct form there, which if you've got a specific question coming off of our podcast, it comes directly to me. I don't have anybody intermediating that, and you'll get a response directly from them.
That's great. I think we can explain that your assistant that may make noise at the mailman is your dog, Blue. So I don't think Blue will be getting in way of folks trying to reach out to learn more, will he?
No. I've tried pasting opposable thumbs on his front paws to see if he can type, but he can't.
Well, excellent. Well, Les, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for our friendship. It's been such an honor having you here, and I wish you the absolute best.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody.